Today's show was recorded live at Paradiso, North Charleston's premier family-friendly social club. Dine, swim, and vibe with Paradiso. The restaurant and market are open to the public. For hours and membership inquiries, go to paradisochs.com or call 843-885-4663. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Shrimp City Report, Charleston's finest podcast on entertainment and leisure. Devin, and today I'm joined with my co-host, DJ.
Hey.
How you doing today?
Good. How's it going?
Good. How's your week been?
Pretty good so far.
So far, the weather's incredible here in Charleston, South Carolina. I know that it's not so great in Florida, and we pray for those folks that are, as of today, as we were recording it, Hurricane Milton is bearing down upon them. But on a happier note, we have Oscar Hines from one of our favorite restaurants here in North Charleston and the Park Circle area by the name of Dashi. And Oscar's going to tell us all about how Dashi came about, his background, and what the future holds for that kind of cool fusion cuisine.
Yeah.
And so, Oscar, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks. Thanks for having me out.
Right on. So you've owned Dashi, or you started, it's like 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, it's 10 years. We started as a food truck. So
Yeah, that's right.
honestly, I'm a little fuzzy on exactly how long it's been, but right now I'm going with 10 years.
When you started on the food truck, were you already in the culinary industry or restauranting?
Not really. So my background, I was an attorney. And so we moved to Charleston and I got out of the legal field altogether.
Yeah.
So I had started a culinary tour business with a friend of mine, and we did the culinary tour for a few years. And that's how I met my current chef and business partner, Stephen. And so we had worked together on the culinary tour. We did this really cool tour. It was a farmer's market tour. So we would meet the chef at the farmer's market in downtown Charleston, go around, pick out ingredients. Then we'd take the group on a walking tour, and the chef would hurry back to his or her restaurant and incorporate the ingredients in a multi-course meal. Well, we did that several times with Stephen, and he always did a great job. And he and I developed a relationship arising from that. So one day he mentioned to me, hey, I think I'd like to start a food truck and explore paella. I said, great. I love steam buns. Nobody's doing that here in Charleston. Let's do paella and steam buns. So I wasn't really ever a restaurateur before this or really in food and beverage. I just pretended to be.
Wow. So you did stuff you dug after the culinary tours. That's enterprising.
So it's almost by happenstance, just like picking out your favorite thing that you went into fusion just between you and Stephen. Liking different foods and wanted to work with both of those.
Yeah, it was kind of a happy coincidence because he had worked at a bunch, like he'd worked at Barca, tapas place here, still in business. He'd worked at Chai's, which I think is now defunct, and Basil. And he worked at a lot of places. So he and I had similar interests.
Yeah.
I did not know that whenever he proposed paella and I proposed steam buns.
Yeah. I mean, that's on two sides of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Or two sides of the world, really, when you think about it. And paella, that is such a labor intensive.
Yeah, you really chose one of the most time consuming foods.
Yeah, it wasn't a great business model, but it was an interesting concept.
So was the food truck, was it, I don't know, that was still also in the infancy of, the food truck boom back then. So you were trailblazing even then.
Yeah, I mean, there were some other trucks that had been pretty well established, like Roti Rolls, which is still going, and they were one of the original food trucks in Charleston. But the food truck market was much smaller and much less well developed than it is now. So for sure, the great thing about food trucks is it doesn't cost a lot of money to start a food truck. It gives you a lot of opportunity to innovate, and that was what was appealing to us,
Yeah.
So that's how we started the food truck.
The innovation must be super important when you're doing any kind of, I guess, food business or culinary business to, I guess, restaurant tours, or you can tell me, or do they sit in a boardroom and hatch the menu and say, this is what it's going to be? Or, I mean, do you like the idea of being able to have some leeway and some freedom to develop foods that if they get traction, they get traction. If not, no big whoop.
Yeah, the food truck was, especially in its infancy, the food truck was much more dynamic and you could take risks, and it was just, we would do a lot of kind of wildish stuff.
Yeah.
Once you get a certain volume, even on the food truck, like you just kind of get crushed by volume, and it really undermines your innovation, you know? So if you have to produce a certain number of pounds of chicken, for example, for a certain service, just because you know you're going to do this heavy workload, it really diminishes your ability to innovate.
Yeah.
And that's not the primary thing, but that was a factor in us opening up a brick and mortar restaurant. So food truck, it's smaller than this cabana we're in right now, right? So you have limited storage, you have limited staff capacity, you have limited cooking equipment. You cannot really handle the demand on a given day and innovate at all. In a restaurant, you've got more square footage, so you can innovate a little bit more and incorporate that, although that's contingent on staffing. So it's not a perfect setup, but that's one thing that we're able to do a little bit more in the restaurant than we found ourselves doing on the food truck, where we just had to replicate the same menu every day because we were just super busy and couldn't keep up.
Yeah. Did you ever find it rewarding though, being able to, I guess, talking about innovation, creativity, working in such a small space, being able to produce something new, you know? It almost how some people artists will use minimum mediums or
or prefer small spaces to paint
just
in
working with
or
little
work
to make
in.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely pretty neat, but the novelty wore off pretty fast. So, we would have breakthroughs and be like, that's really amazing, but it just, that's a hard way to make a living on a food truck.
You'd like to move your elbows past a foot, right?
Right, for sure. I mean, the physical constraints, just how hot it was in the summer. I mean, it's notoriously hot here, but it's really hot on a food truck.
Yeah.
I'll bet.
And so we were all pretty frustrated after a few years of doing that. And we'd had enough success where we thought, well, maybe we've established the concept and we can do it in another setting.
Yeah.
Where are you from?
From West Virginia originally.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're from West Virginia. Big family? Supportive?
No, small family.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you get a lot of support? How was school for you? Things like that.
School was great. I mean, grew up in rural West Virginia, so it was the middle of nowhere, and a really small community, mostly farming community. And so school was great. And then went off to college, I grew up in West Virginia, went to college in Connecticut, which was a departure.
Yeah.
But it was great. I mean, I saw a lot of stuff and got out of West Virginia, which was good for me. And then, eventually made the decision to go to law school and practice law for a while. So school's been good. I mean, I've always done well at school, and I think as a result, I'm comfortable taking risks, and that's how I blundered into food and beverage.
Okay. I guess law school, from West Virginia to Connecticut to law school. We have been to West Virginia before. I drove 4 hours or 5 hours out of the way to go to Point Pleasant to see the Mothman.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
How is he?
Oh, he's doing well. he's got a big statue and right by the Silver Bridge.
Yeah.
So I had to do that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's quite beautiful area.
Almost heaven.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Right. See, my young son knows songs that are older than me.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so so you took the risk. You wanted to open a restaurant, brick and mortar. How do you go about that in Charleston in 2003 or 4? Do you go, look, this is a loaded question. But were you looking in, Mount Pleasant, Peninsula, West Ashley? Where did you look to?
Well, Mount Pleasant is expensive. Even then it was expensive and prohibitively so. We looked at some spots in downtown Charleston, but they were expensive. And probably one of the main factors for us was just we were still operating the food truck, and we intended to continue to operate the food truck in some basis even after we opened the brick and mortar.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, and we still operate the food truck, honestly, although we de-emphasized it. So really the main thing was we wanted to have a space where we could park the food truck. And so this is a little bit in the weeds, but in South Carolina, you have to have a commissary kitchen in order to operate a food truck.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a series of commissary kitchens, and a commissary kitchen is not a great situation because you're sharing it with many, many other tenants, and you're struggling to get space on the cooking equipment and everything else. And so as a result, we wanted to get away from commissary kitchens. So we wanted our restaurant to be our commissary, which meant we had to be able to park our food truck at our restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so in a lot of shopping complexes that are anchored by grocery stores, you can't do that. They're prohibited. So we were really looking for places where we could park our food truck, where it would be convenient to Greater Charleston. So that really meant in most instances a standalone building. So if we were going to lease a standalone building, we had to do that in a relatively affordable area. And that's how we ended up in North Charleston.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, but I didn't realize that about commissary kitchens, that were there several in Charleston? I mean, do people have businesses that are commissary kitchens that you work out of?
There are a few. It's a really interesting business because there aren't very many of them. They take up a lot of space. They're wildly expensive. I mean, it's like a gigantic restaurant you're building out without the seating.
Right.
So they're pretty expensive. And then two, your food truck tenants are not great commercial tenants, because the reason most people get into the food truck business and catering business is it's not expensive to get into. So these are small, poorly capitalized entities by and large, and sometimes they have trouble paying their bills. And so they're not ideal commercial tenants for commissaries. Some tenants are great, but a lot of them are here one day, gone the next.
Yeah, I guess I could see that transient.
Yeah.
With very mobile, I guess. So the catering, you mentioned catering. Did you ever do any of that? I know that I've heard of people bringing food trucks to weddings and stuff like that. Had you ever dabbled in that stuff?
Oh, sure. We still do food truck weddings.
Okay.
So whenever we started the food truck, we would do a lot of retail services. That was before COVID. So, you could park outside of an office building and people still went to work in offices.
Yep.
And then lo and behold, it came to be 11:30. They would roll out of the building and want to eat at a food truck and then go back to work. And that worked out great. During COVID, all that went away. So that was a major, major change for us. But yeah, we've done a lot of weddings and birthday parties and corporate events and, and some catering without the food truck, but a lot of catering with the food truck.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll circle back to COVID. Yeah. I would think that the wedding market is, it's Charleston. You can't swing a dead cat without going into some bougie wedding around Charleston. So, excuse me, I can see how that would be quite lucrative. And then other events. I know they have a food truck rodeo in Charleston every now and again, but that seems like it might be, a lot of herding cats and whatnot. So you have the brick and mortar. You started Dashi on Remount. It is Remount Road, right?
It's Remount Road. That's right.
You started Dashi on Remount, what, 8 years, 10 years?
5 years ago.
5 years?
Wow. 5 years
God,
ago.
it feels like it's been so long.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Because we're fans. Listen, I'm going to tell you this straight up. When they first put Dashi over in your location that you're in, I was like, are they out of their minds? And I say that with as much peace and love as I can possibly muster, because it seemed like, wow, that it was on an island basically, because Park Circle, our fair neighborhood, is already kind of encompassed upon itself anyway. And, Dashi was like the electron that got spun off of, Park Circle. So tell me about, picking that corner.
Well, we like to call ourselves Park Circle adjacent.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
It's part of it's greater Park Circle, if you
Yeah.
will.
Works.
And it's close enough. The reason we're there is because we could afford it.
Mhm.
Like I said, we're looking for a standalone building. We looked at several spots. We looked at one spot that's in Park Circle, right on Montague.
Mhm.
So we went in and looked at it. The architect we were working with said, you're looking at probably a $250,000 upfit.
Mhm.
And they wanted $150,000 key money just to sign the lease to take over the space. And I said, holy cow, if we're going to spend $400,000 for the privilege of turning around and paying somebody over $6,000 a month rent,
Mhm.
let's see if we can just swing it to buy a building. And that's what happened.
Okay.
So we bought that building on Remount Road. It had previously been, way back when, it was a Magic Mart convenience store. And then it had been a Guatemalan restaurant for 7 years. So
Yeah,
we ended
I
up
had
buying
gone
the
there.
restaurant. Yeah,
Yeah.
It was like a food by the pound type of place.
It really was.
Yeah.
It was the first place that it was technically a buffet, but I didn't know it was. You just, like you said, you just buy by the pound. I didn't know it was not a buffet that you couldn't go 7 trips to. There you go. There's a risk there and a leap right there.
And a lot of people thought we were nuts.
Yeah.
But the other side of it too is just we'd operated a food truck for 5 years at that time. We had customers who followed us all over Greater Charleston.
Mhm.
They'd come to us in a lot of really weird spots. And we thought, well, if they come to see us at all these other weird spots all across Charleston, they never know where we are every day. Maybe they'll come to another weird spot too.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Because my personal thought, I was like, did you ever like wonder or like, I don't know, because the convenience of having a food truck is you can pretty much go anywhere you want. Where this, you're a slave almost to where you're located, but having a great fan base especially really balances that out.
Yeah, already built in. That
Yeah.
was so convenient.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what we discovered is that the fan base you have as a food truck is not nearly big enough to sustain you as a restaurant,
Mhm.
but it's a good starting point.
Yeah.
But, it was definitely a little bit rocky, but that's the reason that we ended up where we were. We could afford it. It was a standalone building. We had some history of customers coming to see us at really odd spots. We like that area. Remount Road has a terrible reputation,
Mhm.
like the commanding officer at the Navy base got arrested there 10 years
recall
ago.
that, yeah.
I don't know exactly the time frame. And I've read that it was highlighted, not far from there was highlighted as kind of the center of the drug trade in Greater Charleston.
Mhm.
And it was pretty sketchy, and it has improved dramatically since we've been there.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I think it was a neighborhood in transition, and that's the reason we were able to afford it.
So you get a couple of years in, you start getting some practice in, and then COVID comes in and slaps everyone in the face. How did y'all deal with that or tackle that?
It was petrifying.
Yeah.
Like we were scared to death.
Yeah.
Literally. It was so frightening. And we had opened in July prior to COVID. So we had less than a year under our belt
Mm.
whenever COVID started. So, we had seen, we'd gotten off to a start, and food truck was a big component of our business strategy during that first year, 2 years. And then all the food truck events went away. I remember I was at a festival and the attendance was way off, and the food truck owners were talking to one another, and our restaurant was open at this point. And they said, "Oh, it's this virus," And I said, "Well, that's ridiculous." And then it was COVID, and 2 weeks later, we're shut down. So it was, it was really, really terrifying, but it turned into a growth opportunity for us. So when we first opened up, we didn't use third-party delivery apps. Once COVID started, we embraced third-party delivery. So we really leaned into Uber Eats and DoorDash, and a lot more people got to know about us because they never had us off the food truck. We didn't realize how small our audience was just on the food truck, but Uber Eats and DoorDash really grew our market. So our business grew a lot. Now, we weren't able to do everything we wanted, but coming out of COVID, we were in a much stronger position than going in.
It's amazing because so many restaurants or businesses didn't survive. I guess you can say, well, innovation or some kind of, hard scrabble, pull your boots up. But man, it was was up against a lot of places. It
Yeah.
was really amazing that you got through it.
Well, I mean, so we embraced third-party apps. We're still able to run pretty lean just because we had that food truck experience.
Mhm.
So that was beneficial. The federal government stepped in and helped a lot of small businesses.
Right,
So
right.
that was of tremendous benefit to
Yeah.
us. And, we just put our heads down and worked really hard. And the hardest part for us, and I think probably a lot of businesses, wasn't like COVID, the start of COVID. It was really scary. And then, we had demand for our food. The hard part was when we started to get back to normal and nobody was available to work.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Right.
That was really because we had a lot of demand and we only had, a handful of people and there was nobody really in the pipeline. So, earlier when I was talking about wanting to innovate, but just getting crushed by demand, this was, exponentially greater because we had more demand than we'd ever have.
Yeah.
And we had hardly anybody to work.
No, I definitely remember going to quite a few restaurants, even I feel like it's only now starting to get normalized back to what it used to be as far as like getting people in to work at restaurants and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, for sure. We've really, in the past 3 months, we really feel like we've turned a corner, but there was a long period where within our organization and talking to other restaurateurs, all the fun had gone out of owning a restaurant because we were in this inflationary period and prices were just skyrocketing. They were really unpredictable. The level of service was terrible across the board. So going into restaurants wasn't any fun anymore.
Yeah.
The work ethic, and expectations were not great. So we were dealing with call-offs all the time and just fighting with our staff and just like stepping in to do as much as we can. And it was a real grind. And there was a couple of years where I think a lot of restaurants went out of business because there was no joy in it. The margins were terrible, which they are always terrible, but there was just no joy. There was no like service component that was fulfilling.
Yeah.
How much of that joy is in developing the cuisine? Dashi's been called everything from fusion to, frankly, stoner food. So tell me about everything. I mean, I love everything there. The 5-spice pork belly, the burritos, you name it, the steam buns for sure. And then I'll talk about your bacon liquor. It's bacon liquor, right? your bacon bourbon.
Duck fat.
The duck fat bourbon.
Yeah,
But
bourbon.
tell me about how you came upon the menu, which frankly seems to be the foundation.
That absolutely is the foundation. I mean, that's honestly, I have very little involvement in that, thanks to my really, really smart executive chef, Stephen. And he and I talk about certain things, but he has free reign. And that's one of the great things about having an independent restaurant in a place that we can afford is he has free reign to take risks.
Yeah.
And so if he likes it, he can put it on the menu. And we've done some stuff that was kind of out there and some stuff that didn't work. But the thing of it is, it really fuels his creativity. So there are things that, where I like it or I don't like it. And, more often than not, if I like something, I'll mention it to him and we'll have a discussion about it. And for example, we had a brief discussion today about some menu changes we're doing now in presentation, but really ultimately he's the one who decides all that. But fundamentally, I mean, kind of my objective for the restaurant is you want it to be a place that's friendly, that's casual, that's not ostentatious, that delivers good value. And, so he's trying to fit his food within that paradigm.
Right.
And what he likes is food that is really flavorful, food that is a good value. He shares the same value proposition, and food that works on many different levels. So there's not only is there a lot of flavor, but there's a lot of complexity,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And yes, the prices are great.
Well, thanks. I mean, that's been a struggle for us for years, and we are very, very reticent to raise prices. But sometimes you just have to.
Yeah, that's understandable. That the price points have been great since you opened.
Yeah,
and trust me, I pay attention to that kind of stuff. And not only do you have the food going, you also sell wine. You sell ice creams or pops or other things. Your bar happy hour is one of the best kept secrets around here.
It's a real secret.
Yeah. But it is. The 5-spice mule is fantastic.
Yeah, well, thanks. We appreciate that. So the wine program was a pandemic pivot. So, that's when the dining rooms were closed. We have currently we have two big wine racks right in the center of our dining room, and it kind of splits the dining room in half. Before the pandemic, those were just tables. And we realized during the pandemic, nobody was able to come into the dining room. So really, those didn't represent any value to us, those tables. But the wine racks, everyone wanted to drink. It was a desperate time.
I'll say.
So we pivoted to embracing retail wine, and we decided to do it really aggressively where, we didn't have a corkage on bottles. We tried to get people just to enjoy wine at a very reasonable price. So we adopted wine store pricing as opposed to restaurant pricing for wine. And that's been a really great thing. But, that's something that we started doing the pandemic, and it's kind of, it's allowed us to kind of de-emphasize kind of the difficult things about wine and just to get people to take chances and enjoy wine with us. And our wine program too is a little bit weird in that our food's weird in that it's not everything's a fusion, but it starts from a premise of Latin or Asian. Well, our wine program is Spain, Portugal, Central, South America. So we don't carry any domestic wines. And initially people were just gobsmacked by that. They're like, well, what about, we just don't have it. Right. And now it's become a strength, but really it's again, because we're in this position where we're in this market, we can take risks. And you see that across the board, I think, for our restaurant.
Well, to be known as Spain, Portugal, Central and South American, that's a nice little rub. That's a good go-to. Yeah. If I'm thinking I want some Portuguese, whatever. Plus the other thing that I've noticed is the wine section is not so big that it is overstimulating.
Where you're spending like 40 minutes to make a choice.
Or your head is spinning from the choices. I've even been in there when folks have just, asked one of the folks working in there or the bartender, what do you suggest? And they will go out and, talk to you about it. Yeah. So those little touches, I think, of hospitality or taking care of folks, it means a lot to people, because I think with wine and, food, I think you can explain food rather quickly, but with your new wine, with the wine business, there's just most people want to be led, not like sheep, but they don't know what they're getting a lot of times. I think it's really cool to have a limited selection and people that know what the hell it is.
Yeah, especially like you said, venturing into new territory, Spain, and all these different outside wines, you know, and with the fusion flavors of your restaurant, they want to know what pairs well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to add the complexity just a little bit. So, we're a counter service restaurant. So it's not like we have, servers who go to the tables, and we don't have a sommelier who's, we have people who enjoy wine, and we catch them at the wine rack. We try to talk to them. But if there are times when you're queued up in line and there are 15 people in line and you're making all these decisions, you aren't going to make a considered decision about wine in general.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's been an obstacle that we have had to overcome. And I'm not sure that we have completely, but it's something we certainly didn't anticipate adopting the counter service format.
I wonder if there's some impulse buys on some of those wines, though. I'm already in line. I'll pick this up. We just came from the weapon station base, for a burrito. Let's grab a bottle of wine.
Yeah, that definitely happens sometimes. But what we found too is sometimes people just feel like they're under pressure and they say, "Oh, just give me water." Yeah, I don't want to have to make any more decisions. There are 10 people behind me and they're getting antsy.
You have some folks that have been with you for a while. Do you have anybody that made it through besides you and Steve?
Yeah.
Do you have anybody that made it through the virus with you?
A couple of people. So Stephen and I did. There's a woman named Anna, and she's been with us since right before, maybe 2 weeks before the pandemic started. And then we laid everyone off essentially but her.
Yeah.
And there's another gentleman named Anthony, and he's been with us. He was a critical part of the team before COVID, and then he stuck with us through COVID. But there's so much turnover in food and beverage, and especially during the beginning of the pandemic. I mean, we didn't want to let a lot of people go, but we absolutely had to because we had to be conservative.
Yeah, of course. And especially the government was compensating some folks in that situation. The restaurant's thriving. You have a little outdoor space. What's up with that ice cream trailer outside? Is that legit? I've never been to it.
Oh, you haven't? Well, yeah. Well, it's great.
Okay, cool.
The main reason we do that, so that's a 1971, I believe, Scotty Scotsman camper.
Uh-huh.
And that was just an empty space on the patio. So to back up just a little bit, whenever we acquired the building, that patio is where they stored their dumpster.
Okay.
So I thought, why not have the dumpster on the other side of the building and make this into a patio? And I love it. It's like a little oasis right off Remount Road.
Yeah, for sure.
Where the camper was just kind of an open space. There was some shrubbery there. And I thought, well, it would be great to utilize that space in some meaningful way. I love ice cream. Really, really love ice cream. So I thought, well, desserts aren't Stephen's specialty. Our dessert business was pretty low. I figured that was an opportunity to kind of drive that sector of our menu. And we got this camper. It was totally dilapidated when we got it. I bought it from a guy who lives in Charleston in the Neck, paid $1,000 for it. Then we took it to Gorilla Fabrication, who are friends of ours, and they rebuilt it from the frame up. I guess with those trailers, you don't try to renovate in it everything. You just strip it down and build it back. That's the cheapest way to do it. And it turned out great. And we've got a soft serve ice cream machine in there. We've got a dipping cabinet in there. It is fantastic.
That's awesome. We'll check it out next time. I've been there so many times. But it's always been the same thing, eats and drinks and duck fat bourbon.
We need to.
Who got that
start
hair up
talking
their
about that.
butt to make that?
That was me.
Okay.
That was me. Just doing some research before we opened. I'd read about, washing liquors. And so like you can have a bacon wash, and duck is a big part of our menu. Even when we were a food truck, like we cure the duck in a 5-spice powder, then we confit the duck, then we pick the duck, then we saute the duck. So it's probably a 3 or 4 day process. Yeah. It's really intricate and involved. And that's the case with our pork belly. We cure in a 5-spice, and our chicken we marinate. So most of our proteins are multi-day affairs. So we were just drowning in duck fat. I mean, we have duck fat all over the restaurant. And I thought, well, it's a fundamental thing to what we do. Let's see if we can incorporate that in the bar program.
It's a signature.
Yeah, it really is. It turned out great. I did not expect it to taste as good and as complex as it does.
It does. It has not a viscosity, not what I'm saying, but it lingers.
It's definitely a different mouthfeel. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, it definitely lingers. But I like that. I think it's very cool.
Yeah. That's been with us from the very start. I mean, we've changed a lot of things with our cocktail program, and with that, and with the desserts, and with the food. Like, we like to innovate, but that's been something that's been with us from the start.
Now, is that an in-bar only product? Have you ever thought about selling bottles of that?
No, I would never do that in a million years.
Okay,
it's very niche-y, and we aren't that type of establishment.
Fair enough.
We try to stay in our lane.
All right, exclusive only to
that's right, only to us and counter servicing in North Charleston.
Yeah,
let's talk about the future. Any big plans coming up? Or are you just going to keep this culinary ocean liner going?
Well, we would like to expand. Bad thing about expansion, it's wildly expensive. Charleston is such a hot market. It is, the construction industry is so busy here. The retrofit, upfit industry is so busy here. It's hard to find a second generation space that is suitable. There are a lot of restaurants in Charleston that are restaurants in name only. There's no hood. There's no grease trap. There's no legitimate cooking equipment. It's just not something that we could do. And then to build out a restaurant in Charleston, even if you don't own the real estate, you're probably looking at close to $1 million. And that's a lot of
That is
burritos.
prohibitive.
It really is. And I don't know if that's true in other markets, but in Charleston, it's wildly expensive. So we would love to expand. We just can't get our heads around how we're going to do it economically and kind of minimize our risk. You know, it's not like we're a big corporation. I mean, we're just a couple guys, you know? So we're paying for all this stuff out of our own pocket, and we're trying to figure that out. We are planning to open a wine bar
Ooh, cool.
on Remount Road, which is another really weird, probably bad decision.
I don't know. I think that would be, I think that could really pop off. Yeah.
You're pretty, your track record's pretty good for taking risks.
Well, yeah, taking plenty of risks. Why stop now?
Well, there are plenty of reasons to stop, but so that's something where, you know, we've really enjoyed the wine program, and also sake and beer and D9. And so those are products that we really enjoy, that have resonated. It gives us an opportunity to open something up without building out a full-scale restaurant.
Yeah.
The alternative spirits market must be just blowing up right now.
There's a ton of innovation. It's super interesting. So we've really enjoyed that. And the alternative spirits in general, like, I don't know what direction that goes in over time, but it's something that we've definitely tried to embrace. And, you know, there's so many different products coming on the market. It's really exciting to see.
Yeah.
But a wine bar gives us an opportunity to leverage the restaurant, prepare food at the restaurant, with the footprint we currently have, sell it at a wine bar, and kind of broaden our wine profile.
That's a good idea. I like that. I like that. And you can bring something else to the table. No pun intended. All right. Well, we appreciate you stopping by. You got any follow-up, say bullets, Devin?
I don't know. Good.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, this is a nice, quick, succinct talk with one of the proprietors of a restaurant that we dearly like and love.
Absolutely.
And we are unabashed about saying that. We have no problem with that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your support. Thank you very much.
Well, you have lots of support. There really is a groundswell of folks, you know, around here that will definitely, if somebody says something about Dashi out in the wild, it will get on the various Facebook chatter groups and be run into the ground. So, you know, anyway. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming by, Oscar. We will be back in a week after this with our November Roundup podcast.
Yep.
And then otherwise, everybody stay safe and y'all be good to each other. Thanks.
Bye.